A former soldier is stabbed to death under mysterious circumstances.
The victim pretty much drowned in his own blood.
What a horrible way to go.
As Lt.Joe Kenda and his team delve into the victim's personal life.
Hi, excuse me.
He was convinced that she was in love with him.
You can't make her love you.
They uncover a dangerous secret.
That brings in jealousy and hatred and rage.
Sometimes terrible things happen that were never intended. I am always suspicious of people who are found at crime scenes. Of all the places you could be right now, why are you at this one?
There's one thing that never changes: murder. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories. I never know where a case is going to lead, but I'll never stop until it's solved. Somebody has to look out for the victim.
If you kill, I will find you.
It's closing in on midnight, and most of the residents on West Navajo Street have gone to bed. Except for Kathleen Herzl.
She just decided to stay home this particular Tuesday evening. She was flipping through a magazine, listening to a cassette tape on her Walkman.
She's just being cozy in her apartment. And all of a sudden, she hears something that really catches her interest.
And there's a young man, and he was covered in blood.
Across town, Lt.Joe Kenda is busy, performing an important ritual.
I would clean my weapon routinely once a week. I was always very careful to maintain it. That weapon is a self-defense weapon in the hands of a policeman, and your life depends on its condition. And I thought, well, I know who that is at 11 o'clock at night.
Miss Kenda.
And it was Police Communications Center. Dispatch informs me there are multiple stabbing victims in an apartment in the southwest part of the city.
Okay, got it.
And then, of course, you reassemble the weapon and you're on your way to work.
"20 minutes later, Kenda pulls up to a modest apartment complex, swarming with police activity.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Skip. So what we got? We got a 23-year-old white male deceased with a stab wound to the chest.
An individual named Timothy Bolton was the victim in this case. The crime scene was his apartment, which was on the ground level.
We discovered Mr. Bolton is a relatively new resident. He is not married, and he resides in an apartment by himself.
Didn't dispatch report multiple stab victims? Not that I'm aware of.
He informs me that there's no multiple victims at this location. That report was incorrect.
Who called it in? One of the neighbors did.
It's very common that first reports are erroneous. You're dealing with emotional witnesses screaming into a telephone. Somebody's trying to translate that information into something meaningful, and it rarely is correct.
Any person of interest? Yeah, we got 2. Really?
Upon the initial arrival of medical personnel, there were a couple of men that were outside and appeared to be engaged in some kind of disturbance.
Dude, are you crazy? I'm gonna beat the shit out of you!
Hey! Stop it! Shut up! Come here.
According to Detective Skip Arms, the men were identified as 22-year-old Mitchell Anderson and 21-year-old Matt Martin.
They both had blood on them and seemed intoxicated, so patrol brought them down to the station.
The police always grab everyone that is involved at a violent crime scene. They're going to, at a minimum, put you in custody momentarily to determine whether or not you are a material witness, whether you could be a suspect.
Let's take a look. Wow, what a mess. Yep.
The scene is very bloody, underneath him as well as around him and on him.
And what was unusual is that his feet were propped up on a coffee table.
Did the EMTs prop his feet up?
No, sir. He was like that when they arrived.
Whoever did this must have Army experience.
The Army is trained, and it's still true today, that if you suffer a massive traumatic injury to the chest, you are taught to elevate the legs, to cause the blood to drain from the legs into the torso to protect the major organs.
And unfortunately, it didn't do him much good.
Moving the shirt a little bit, you can see the wound. It's a single stab wound, and it's from the side, which is common in a knife attack.
Looks like the work of a kitchen knife. Was a murder weapon recovered? No, not yet. What do you make of that?
We did notice that there was one moccasin slipper in the living room.
Maybe it was left behind by our suspect when he fled the scene?
So, did our killer leave his shoe without realizing it?
Check that out.
There was a spot on the wall that had some blood spatter, and then it was right where the floor and the wall came together.
A bloody object made contact with that wall. Perhaps it was a knife. Perhaps the perpetrator then grabbed it as they were running out that front door.
Want to be sure to bag that up?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go.
I head outside and I see a distressed young woman. I'm told her name is Lori Wheeler and she lives in an upstairs apartment above the victim.
Let's go see what she has to say.
Lori lived there with her common-law husband, Mitchell Anderson, and their 3 young children.
I'm Lieutenant Kenda, this is Detective Arms. Do you mind if we ask you a few questions?
Of course, go ahead.
She was very worried because Mitchell had been detained by the police, and she didn't know what was going on.
Can you tell us what happened here tonight?
Yeah, it was about 11, and I heard this pounding on the door. Who is it? Who is it?
Hey!
Are you?
Hey, no, I need you to use your phone.
God.
Some guy comes to her apartment, covered in blood, very, very distressed, and asking her to call an ambulance.
So I ran to the phone and called for help.
She said the man had a army fatigue jacket on and a white tank top, and he had blood all over him, and he was very upset.
And based on her description, it appeared that it was Matt Martin who had come to her door.
Were you at home alone when this happened?
Oh, no. My 3 kids were asleep, and so was Mitchell. But all the commotion woke Mitchell up. That guy was acting so crazy.
Lori explains that's when things spun out of control.
What's going on?
There's a crazy man here. He's covered in blood.
Then she claims that this guy turns around and just slugs her husband, punches him right in the face.
So Mitchell chased after him, and that's when the police showed up and took them both away, even though Mitchell was not...
Sorry, ma'am. Let's take a step back for a second. Why did this guy punch Mitchell?
I don't know. I have no idea.
The more she talks, the less sense it makes. This stranger has a number of doors to select from, but he selects her door. And why would he assault Mitchell Anderson without comment?
How well do you know the victim, Tim Botham?
We'd say hello sometimes.
She says that she knows he moved in there a few months ago. She doesn't really know him.
I wish I could help you more, but I really don't know anything. I'd like to go back inside to see my kids.
It's a bizarre story, but at this point we have no reason to keep this young mother.
And we'll notify if we have any other questions.
Do you know when my husband will be allowed to come home?
Well, we can't say for sure. Hopefully we'll get a statement and we can sort this all out quickly. I'll bring it back in.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking about our next move when all of a sudden...
Dispatch for Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
We have a report of a second stabbing.
Dispatch said there's another stabbing victim at St. Francis Hospital, which is very close to where we are.
What time were they admitted?
Around 23:30.
10-4, I'll send a detective over there to talk to him.
I think back to the moment in the garage when they said multiple stabbing victims. Well, maybe we've only found one so far, and now maybe we just found another. We're investigating the death of Mr. Timothy Botham, and we've been told there's another victim in a hospital also stabbed from the same general part of the city.
Stabbings don't happen every day, and first thought was maybe this was somebody who was involved in the altercation with Tim.
So I send a detective, go there and see what the deal is with that.
Within minutes, a detective arrives at St. Francis Hospital.
Hi, excuse me. I'm looking for someone who checked in a couple hours ago with a stab wound.
Oh, yeah. Let's see, Jeremy Brown.
She says he transports himself to St. Francis Hospital with a serious cut to his hand.
He was pretty intoxicated when he came in. Something just seemed a little bit off, so we went ahead and reported it.
Sure.
The nurse calls the police because, in her opinion, it's a stab wound.
Do you mind if I talk to him?
Yeah, of course, follow me.
Great.
Hey, Jeremy. This detective would like to ask you some questions.
Okay. Hey.
Jeremy Brown is a 30-year-old male. He tenses up when that detective walks in the room.
Jeremy, can you tell me how you got that nasty cut?
It turns out that Mr. Brown is a bartender in a bar about 2 blocks from our crime scene in the commercial district side.
I worked a double today. I was doing some last-minute prep work before I left. Guess I just wasn't thinking straight.
And one for the bartender. Cheers.
Mr. Brown had an unusual habit. Every time he served you a drink, he'd serve himself one. So Mr. Brown was a little bit under the weather at the time he's trying to cut limes with a bar knife. And he misses badly. Instead of the lime, he cuts himself.
Just cut my finger. Oh, damn. You're probably gonna need stitches for that.
Any witnesses to back that story up?
Yeah, a couple of my coworkers saw it.
Okay. Could you give me some names, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There was a misunderstanding. It's an unrelated work injury.
10-4, thanks for the update.
So Mr. Brown is not the victim of anything other than his own intoxication and his inability to handle a knife.
Hey, Lieutenant. We canvassed the area. I found a neighbor who had contact with the victim earlier tonight.
That's the guy right there?
Yeah.
Let's go talk to him.
So we contact a neighbor named Steve Mullinex. He reports he casually knows Mr. Botham.
Detective Irons. So what do you know about what went on tonight?
Actually, I was in bed by 10, so I didn't really know much about what was going on at all until I heard the ambulance pull up. And, I still can't believe it. Literally was just talking to Tim a few hours ago.
And he tells us that actually earlier that evening, around 7 o'clock, Tim had come over to his apartment to use his telephone to call his mother.
Tim talked to my mother, father before he died, and I think they talked about, coming to see him next summer. We grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was a middle child, and he was 5 years younger than me, and so he's a baby of the family.
Okay, tell us about him.
Good guy. He was stationed here with the Army. just recently got out, actually. And he's just been trying to figure out what to do with himself since. And he seemed like a happy guy.
So it's interesting that Mr. Mullinax reports that in the earlier evening, Mr. Bothan is not distressed and is telling his mother how happy and good his life is right now.
Any idea what his plans were for the evening?
No. You know, although I did actually see him having a beer with a buddy of his outside of his place a little while ago.
And do you know what the friend's name was?
His army buddy. Oh, man, what's his name? Matt.
Oh, I appreciate your help.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
So now we've placed Martin in that crime scene at around 8 o'clock. Did something go wrong between Mr. Martin and Mr. Bothan? And how did Mitchell Anderson become involved in this? We don't know, but we're going to find out. I'm about to leave that scene area to go back to headquarters when a car pulls up.
Where's Mitchell?
And police are thinking, well, who is this and what's she doing here?
Where's Mitchell?
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Kenda.
Are the kids okay? I heard someone died.
They find out she's Mitchell's mother, Mardell Anderson, and she had overheard something on the telephone that caused her a lot of concern.
And she thought she better come down there because her concern was the 3 small children.
Well, the kids are fine. We got to take your son down to the station and ask him a few questions about an incident. Now, Lori's upstairs with the kids.
Oh, thank goodness. Lately, things have been going so good for Mitch. But you know, you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mardell tells police her son was a hard worker, that he worked during the day as a cook at a local restaurant, and he actually had just gotten some good news at his job. He was getting a promotion.
Do you know anything about the murder that happened here tonight?
Well, I did hear something when I was talking with Lori on the phone.
She had told police that Lori and Mitchell had gone out for dinner, and so she called Lori's house about 11 o'clock that evening to find out how things went.
And when Lori answered the phone, she sounded scared to death. And my son, he was arguing with some guy in the background.
Lori, how was dinner?
Hi, I can't talk right now. The police are coming.
You need to get the hell out. What the f? I'm not going anywhere.
Lori tells her that Mitchell is arguing with some guy named Matt.
And then all of a sudden, Mardell hears her son, Mitchell, shout out, "Oh no, you killed him."
I gotta go.
Lori! Lori!
And then the line went dead. That would encourage any mother to get in her car and drive down there to find out what the hell was going on.
I'm so scared for those kids.
Mrs. Anderson seems completely believable. Her story implies that Matthew Martin is the person responsible for this death.
Do you know a man named Matt Martin?
No, I don't think so.
But why did Lori say that she didn't know him? So the question then becomes, Lori, who are you protecting? And we're going to get to the bottom of that, whether you like it or not. So we're investigating the death of Timothy Bothan, recently discharged from the United States Army. We have the witness, Mrs. Anderson, saying she overheard her son say, "You killed him." And those facts are beginning to point a shaky finger at Matt Martin.
When Matt Martin and Mitchell Anderson were first contacted, it certainly appeared that one or both of them was possibly under the influence of alcohol.
So maybe this murder is a result of a drunken brawl turned deadly.
I need a couple of officers to escort Matt Martin and Mitchell Anderson to Memorial Hospital separately.
Copy that, Lieutenant.
We felt that it was important as quickly as possible to get them to the hospital to get a blood draw so we could determine what level of alcohol we're dealing with.
What about Lori? Let's bring her down to the station for a second interview. Maybe she'll remember more of the story.
Sure thing. What about our kids, though?
Let's see if Grandma can help out.
Got it. Lieutenant, Timothy Bothan's mother called looking for you. She said call right away.
In the case of death notification for out-of-state people, we try to avoid a telephone notification because it's so impersonal.
Is that the number?
Yeah. Thanks.
We had the local agency respond to the parents' home, tell them, then have them call us. There's nothing easy about doing that. There's no specific way to do it, and it's always horrible. It's the nature of the work. You have to do that.
I don't understand. This just can't be real.
As a mother, you'd be thinking, how horrible that my son had to go through something like that.
He just decided to go to school and study electronics.
Tim was still finding himself, but I think he liked this city and he was gonna, stay here and see what he could do.
Do you know if Tim was having trouble with anyone?
If he did, he didn't tell me.
How about a Matt Martin?
Matt, I don't think so.
Mrs. Bothan had never met him, but knew that it was a friend of her son's from the Army.
I can't believe he's gone. What am I supposed to do?
I don't promise the mother that I will resolve this. I promise the mother that I will do everything humanly possible to resolve it.
I will be in touch.
Thank you.
I cannot bring her son back to life. That's the ultimate resolution, something I cannot do. But I can at least advise the manner and method by which their son died and who is responsible for it.
The next call Kenda receives may get him one step closer to solving this case.
Miss Kenda.
We got a call from the coroner's office. Come over and see the results of the autopsy on Mr. Bothan.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, Lieutenant.
Did you find anything interesting?
You know me.
The coroner reports that there was a single stab wound, that it severed a major artery, punctured a lung.
He basically drowned to death on his own blood.
Okay.
It's a fatal stab wound, the magic wound that kills you before anything can be done about it.
But I found something else I think you might want to know about.
What's that?
This wound here.
It was extremely superficial, but it was an incised wound, meaning it was caused by a sharp instrument, probably a knife.
Probably happened within the last week or so. I don't think it had anything to do with the fatal encounter.
It's interesting, but there's no way to tell if it had anything to do with the case.
Oh, sorry. Mind if I use your phone?
Of course not.
So I got a page from the officer who took Matt Martin to the hospital to get his blood alcohol test done.
This is Kenda.
Hey, Lieutenant. Yeah, I wanted to give you a quick update on one of your detainees, Matt Martin.
Okay.
While I was transporting him to the hospital, he made some spontaneous utterances.
So the officer says that Mr. Martin was extremely distraught. He seemed maybe remorseful even.
Hey, do I have blood on my face? I can feel it.
And the officer said that Martin repeatedly said he never stabbed him. He tried everything he could to save his life.
I'm serious. I didn't kill him. I just grabbed the knife.
He did say at one point that he picked up the knife and threw it across the room, and it bounced off the wall and onto the ground.
So maybe he's telling the truth. Or maybe he's worried we'll find that knife with his fingerprints all over it. Who knows? It's all questions we need to explore when we get a chance to talk to Mr. Martin.
Well, I should be heading back to the station with him shortly. He's really emotional still. He may be hard to get a statement from.
Okay, thanks for the update. Hey, Doc, I gotta run.
So I'm on my way back to the office, and Detective Arms gets a hold of me.
Go for Kenda. Received a telephone call from Cassie Feathers, and she identified herself as the babysitter for Lori's kids.
She says she might know who is responsible for his death.
Great. Have her meet me back at the station as soon as possible. I'll be there at 10.
So we sit down with Cassie, and she is very distressed about the fact that Mr. Bothan is dead.
This is so messed up. Why is Matt in custody for Tim's death? They were best friends.
Well, right now, Matt's a potential suspect in Tim's murder.
She says he can't possibly be responsible for this crime.
The only person I knew he was having any trouble with was Lori.
Lori Wheeler? His neighbor?
Yeah, I babysit for her and Mitchell all the time.
Interesting. Lori told us she doesn't know Matt or Tim, and apparently she knows both.
If she knows Tim.
It was her belief that probably, at least for the last 2 months, that Tim and Lori were getting friendly and seeing each other more.
I think they're having an affair.
Not only does Lori know Timothy Botham, she's his lover. So Lori is lying about everything. Well, my. As we are investigating the murder of Tim Botham, we're talking to the woman who babysits for the kids of Lori Wheeler and Mitchell Anderson. And now it appears we're dealing with a love triangle.
When we talked to Cassie, we had no reason to doubt what she was saying.
All right, why don't you tell me about this relationship between Tim and Lori?
She told me they were just friends, but you could tell there was something more going on. And then tonight, Tim was telling me about all these problems he's been having with Lori, and he was just acting really jealous and weird.
I want you to tell us a little bit about what happened tonight.
Okay.
So Cassie related to us that on this evening, Lori had called her and asked her to come babysit and told her that Lori and Mitchell would be home by 9:30.
I put the kids to bed like I normally do when I come over, and I went outside and was hanging out with Matt and Tim.
It's almost 10 o'clock. I thought you said they were going to be back by 9:30. What the hell are they doing?
Tim, calm down, man. Freaking me out.
Sorry, man.
She believes that Tim is getting angry because he's thinking that Lori's out having a good time with Mitchell when he's under the belief that she doesn't want to be with him.
Tim did mention something about them having an argument.
Cassie goes on to say that on that same evening, he pulls up his shirt and shows her an injury, a minor injury on his arm.
You want to see something crazy?
Not really.
No, you got to see this.
He tells Cassie that recently he and Lori got in an argument about Mitchell, that why don't you get rid of him and I can move in with you? And they fought about it. She pulled a knife and cut his arm.
Really?
I only know what he told me.
Now, when she said that, I remembered that the coroner had said he had a minor incised wound on his arm. That's interesting.
So what happened when Lori and Mitchell came home?
Tim got really quiet when Lori showed up.
Oh, hey, you guys.
Hey.
Cassie, how are the kids?
They're fine. I read them like 4 books and they fell asleep.
Great.
Yeah.
Here is your money.
Thank you.
Mitchell's in the car.
Alrighty. See you later. Yeah. Thank you. Bye, guys.
See ya. So where have you guys been all night?
Cassie says Mitchell was going to give her a ride home, and as she walked downstairs, she heard Tim questioning Lori.
Tim, come on, let's leave.
Cassie says she was glad to get out of the situation, but when she got in the car with Mitchell...
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, Cassie.
She realized he had been drinking.
I can just call someone else to come get me.
No. Don't be silly. I got it.
Unfortunately, she made a bad call getting into a car with a drunk, but she says she saw something interesting.
And as I was leaving, Tim and Lori were talking outside. And that was the last I saw of them before I heard Tim was dead.
We need to speak to Matthew Martin and Lori. But of those two, Lori is the most promising because she's the one who directly lied to us about everything.
Within the hour, Kenda and Arms sit down with Lori Wheeler.
We need to ask you a few questions. Some of the stuff you told us didn't quite add up.
We told her we wanted to know the truth.
Well, what do you want to know?
Why don't you tell us about your relationship with Tim?
What? No, there was no relationship. We were just friends.
Lori, you need to shoot straight with us. We already know the truth.
Listen. Nothing was going on. But I confided in Tim that I wasn't sure if I should marry Mitchell. And then all of a sudden, he was asking me out.
She says, he flirted with me a lot and asked me out several times, but I never went out with him.
I told Mitchell about it. But he didn't really care. He told me to just ignore him.
So she's denying there was an affair. Fine. Tell me what you know about Tim's death.
Why don't you walk us through what happened earlier tonight?
Well, Mitchell took me out to celebrate his new promotion.
She says that she was having a great time that evening with Mitchell.
Lori, I want to do right by you and the kids. I think it's time we get married.
Really?
Everything was just fine. In fact, they were even considering formal marriage.
It's time.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
I would love that. We must have lost track of time. When we got home, I saw Cassie outside talking to Tim and Matt.
Lori tells us that Mitchell left almost immediately with Cassie to take her home, and that Tim then confronted her.
So what have you guys been doing all night?
Tim, it's late.
No, I want to know. You guys have been gone for hours.
I should go check on the kids.
So what? You in love with him all of a sudden?
And that's when it got to be physical. She shoved him, he shoved her back.
Lori, I thought you were in love with me.
Hey! Stop! You okay?
And the fight was stopped by Matthew Martin.
And I ran back to my apartment. I couldn't stop crying.
She then says at that time, Mitchell returns and sees her disheveled appearance and says, "What happened?" And she says, "Timothy hit me."
He was so angry. He ran outside, and I heard him fighting with Tim and Matt downstairs.
And then what happened?
Then he came back upstairs. I thought the whole thing just blew over.
And that's when Matt shows up at the door with blood all over him, saying you have to call an ambulance.
Listen, you need to tell us the truth. Did Mitchell stab Tim?
No.
Did you stab Tim?
No.
Lori says she doesn't know who stabbed him, and I don't believe her at all.
Are we done here?
Yeah, we're done for now. But you're gonna have to wait and hold it until we straighten this thing out. We'll send someone in to get you.
Lori is in custody now for her involvement in this crime. Well, I don't think she stabbed Tim, but it's pretty clear she's directly involved.
Back in his office, Kenda is mulling over Lori's story.
Hey, boss. Got the toxicology report back.
So in the case of Matthew Martin, his blood alcohol content level is 0.030, relatively light. And in the case of Mitchell, it's 0.197, which is very high.
Wow. That's near blackout level.
Mitchell was essentially twice the legal limit.
Let's get a search warrant for Mitchell and Lori's place. I got a feeling we're gonna find some blood evidence there. And if we're lucky, the murder weapon. You got it, Lieutenant.
While they wait for the warrant to be processed, Kenda and Arms decide it's time to speak to Mitchell Anderson.
About time you guys showed up.
Mitchell is still intoxicated, although he's coherent, and he's able to answer questions.
How well do you know Timothy Botham? Who's that? Is that the guy who died?
He has no idea what we're talking about.
So Kenda turns up the heat.
Why don't you tell us about your girl Lori and her relationship to Timothy Botham?
And he got a very strangled look in his face.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What Mitchell Anderson offered was denial. Whatever we said, he said no.
And at this point of our questioning of Mitchell, I happened to glance down to the floor and the light bulb came on.
What happened to your other shoe? I don't know.
And we look at each other, and we both have the same thought. Well, we know where the other one is, don't we? It is a standard end to a standard type of investigation where everyone lies, everyone denies, and the truth always comes out.
Actually, Mitchell, we already know where your other shoe is. We found it next to Tim's dead body at his apartment.
Well, how'd it get there?
That's a really good question. That's what we'd like to know.
Well, somebody must have planted it.
Who would have done that?
Who's the somebody? Is it the shoe fairy? And he just looks at us.
I want a lawyer.
All right. Well, Mitchell Anderson, you're under arrest for first-degree murder. Go ahead and cuff him.
Stand up. Put your hands behind your back.
Though Mitchell isn't cooperating, an active search of Mitchell and Lori's apartment strengthens the case against him.
Hey, Julie.
Yeah.
Come take a look at this.
We searched and we found a number of incriminating blood smears that were on the kitchen cabinets. We also found bloody clothing that Mitch Anderson had been wearing. He was trying to conceal it.
Although the evidence points to Mitchell as the killer, Kenda and Arms still need to unravel what exactly happened and what part, if any, Lori Wheeler played in Tim's death.
Lieutenant? Matthew, have a seat.
Matt Martin turned out to be a very key piece to this investigation, and he was able to really define for us everybody's roles and what happened.
Look, I hit Mitchell first. I admit it. But that son of a bitch killed Tim. All over a woman.
And he just starts talking, and we listen. We don't ask him any questions. He just tells us.
Ever since Tim moved into the complex, Lori was just nothing but a flirt. I mean, he thought she really liked him. I told him not to mess with a taken woman, but he wouldn't listen.
It's okay, Matt. Just tell us what happened.
What we conclude is that Mitchell and Lori had in fact gone out to dinner.
And while celebrating, Mitchell consumed a large amount of alcohol.
It's been a long time coming.
Hey, another one, please.
He's essentially blasted on alcohol. Somehow he's able to drive Lori home without getting in a wreck, and then he offers a ride to the babysitter.
And as soon as Mitchell left to take Cassie back home, Tim confronted Lori.
So what? You love him all of a sudden? No.
Well, you break it off.
You, Lori.
Stop. Stop. Lori confronted him then and said, hey, I want to be with Mitchell and we're going to get married.
According to Matt, though Tim was angry, it was Lori that escalated the situation.
Matt says that Lori has Timothy's hair in her hands. She's pulling his hair, pulling his ears, trying to punch him.
Lori, are you okay? Lori.
Get away from me!
Stop. What is wrong with you?
I'm sorry,
No,
okay?
it's done.
Lori! It's over. It's done. It's done.
He takes Timothy back to his own apartment and leaves Lori upstairs.
10 minutes later, Mitchell returns home to a chaotic scene.
Hey, babe. What's wrong?
He hit me.
What? Who hit you?
Tim.
He's got to wonder, why would this neighbor attack her?
Lori, what's going on? Are you sleeping with him?
Lori? And even though he's that drunk, he's not stupid. He puts two and two together, and he is furious.
You son of a bitch.
He armed himself with a kitchen knife.
He's not going to get away with this.
Mitchell!
According to Matt, he was trying to talk some sense into Tim.
Dude,
I don't want to hear your bullshit
you're going to break
anymore.
up her family?
Look, I'm done talking to you
you
about
can't make her love you. Tim, I'm telling you, you have to let her go.
it. You're being crazy.
I'm not.
You hit my girl, you son of a bitch.
Cut out!
Tim is a lot bigger and a lot stronger than Mitchell, and he's overpowering him. Lori's afraid that Tim's going to hurt Mitchell.
And as Lori jumps on Tim's back and pulls his head back, that gave Mitchell the opportunity to plunge that knife into Tim's chest.
What is wrong with you?
And then Matt was able to grab the knife and throw it away into the other part of the apartment.
Matt explains that as Mitchell and Lori ran off, he tried to help his dying friend.
It's believed at that point that when Mitchell left, he grabbed the knife and took it away from the crime scene.
Tim didn't have a phone, so I ran up to their apartment.
Who is it? Hey, open up!
Lori, I need to use your phone right now. Do you have a phone?
Hey, Kyle, what's going on, man? Well, don't yell at her, man. What's going on?
You know exactly what's going on.
Mitchell is already scrambling for a way out of this. It is amazing that as drunk as Mitchell was, he could still create an alibi on the spot.
You're the one with the bloody shirt, man. You need to get out.
I'm not going anywhere.
Go.
Tim is dead.
Hey, you killed him.
Matt, is he dead?
You need to get out.
I'm not going anywhere right now. No.
Mitchell Anderson accuses Matthew Martin of killing Timothy Bothan. Look at the blood in your clothes, and what Mrs. Anderson overhears is her son saying, "You killed that man."
I couldn't believe he was trying to pin this on me. I was so angry, I just slugged him. And then he chased me downstairs, and that's when the police showed up. He deserves to rot in hell.
All right, well, thank you for the information. Detective Arms will escort you out.
Nobody planned to kill anybody, but he sat and watched his best friend die that night. It should never have happened.
Lori Wheeler is ultimately convicted of criminally negligent homicide. She is sentenced to 4 years probation and 60 days in jail. Mitchell Anderson pleads guilty to second-degree murder and receives 24 years in prison.
I think the story about Tim, you got to appreciate what you got in life. I would probably say to Tim, I was honored to be a brother. I miss him. And I really miss not knowing what he would be in life. And I would tell him I'm glad I knew him.
What's unusual in this particular case is what is often seen among young people. Mix in a little alcohol, a little emotion, and it can be a fatal experience.
That always breaks the heart the most, and that is greed. When money is involved, the ties that bind a family together can snap in a single instant, and blood becomes just another currency to be traded. Welcome to LaGrange, Georgia, in February of 1991. This is a picturesque, tight-knit community. Nothing like the hustle and bustle of its neighbor Atlanta. It is the kind of town where everybody knows your name, your business, and your family history. Margaret Abernathy was 66 years old, and she was the undisputed matriarch of this town. She and her late husband built a local empire from a successful car dealership, investing in real estate and farms. But Margaret was not just a wealthy businesswoman. She was a kind soul. She was the type of woman who left buckets of fresh vegetables at the dealership for anyone who needed them. She loved her children so deeply and blindly that she would do anything to see their dreams come true. That love, that pure, unconditional motherly love, became her death warrant. I tell you, it makes you sick to your stomach. Margaret had 3 children, but it was her middle child, a 41-year-old woman named Priscilla Matula, who was groomed to take over the family legacy. Priscilla was the apple of her mother, his eye, an inseparable companion. When Priscilla wanted to buy a dealership with her new husband, Nick, Margaret did not hesitate. She fronted $130,000, putting up her own house and a certificate of deposit as collateral to give her daughter the world. But Priscilla was not a brilliant businesswoman. She was a fraud, and her kingdom was built on sand. On Monday, February 4th, at around 12:30 in the afternoon, a 911 call comes in. It is Priscilla. She is frantic, playing the part of the hysterical daughter to absolute perfection, claiming she walked into her mother's house and found her hurt after a burglary. Emergency medical technicians rush to the scene. They find Margaret on the bathroom floor, making agonal snoring sounds. clinging to life by a thread. They rush her to the hospital, and the emergency room doctors discover the horrific truth. This was no fall, and this was no random beating. She had been shot twice in the head with a small caliber weapon. The brain stem was severed. They put her on life support, but she was gone. The family had to unhook her and watch the woman who gave them everything slip away. You look at a woman who spent her entire life giving to others, dying in a cold hospital room because someone decided her bank accounts were more valuable than her heartbeat. It is a tragedy of the highest order. So my team and I arrive at the house, which is now an active crime scene. The family insists it was a home invasion. Well, my. You have to be kidding me. A crime scene will always speak to you if you just shut up and listen to it. We look at the back door where the intruder supposedly forced entry. There is a broken glass pane, but the glass is on the outside of the door, meaning someone stood inside the house and broke it outward. Furthermore, the hole is so small you could not even fit a hand through it to reach the lock. We go to the bedroom. Drawers are pulled open, but the contents are taken out and set neatly on the floor. Let me educate you on something. Real burglars do not tidy up. They do not care about your floors. They destroy, they ransack, and they take whatever they can carry. Here, expensive televisions and electronics are completely ignored, sitting in plain sight, while a specific mink coat, some jewelry, and a small Derringer pistol are missing. The scene was staged. It was a poorly written play directed by an absolute amateur trying to manipulate the police. When you have a stage scene, you look at the inner circle. The family points fingers at Diaka, a gentle giant who lived with Margaret to care for her late husband. We find him, and he is crying his eyes out, broken by the loss of a woman he viewed as a grandmother. We check his alibi. He was secretly interviewing for a job at another car lot that morning. He is clear. Then the son-in-law, Nick, tries to throw shade on Margaret, his son, Alec, claiming Alec had financial troubles and was waiting on a $40,000 inheritance. But Alec was at work surrounded by witnesses. His alibi is airtight. When you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how sinister, must be the truth. We turn our eyes to the grieving daughter, Priscilla. 2 days after the murder, a bank manager calls us, and this is a turning point that blows the case wide open. The Saturday before she died, Margaret walked into the bank. She was physically agitated, emotionally distraught, almost inconsolable, her blood pressure through the roof. A mother had just realized her beloved daughter was robbing her blind. State financial experts later confirmed that Priscilla was running a massive check-kiting scheme, bouncing bad checks worth $20,000 to $30,000 between banks to create a phantom cash flow for a failing dealership. Margaret found out. She demanded the bank remove Priscilla from all business accounts instantly. The bank told her they did not have the personnel to do it on a Saturday. Margaret swore she would be there first thing Monday morning to cut her daughter off forever. She never made it. This is where the psychology of a killer strips away every mask of human decency. Priscilla knew Monday was the end. She would lose the dealership, the money, the status, and face absolute financial ruin. She had all weekend to look in the mirror and decide what she was. She could be a failed businesswoman facing the music, or she could be a killer protecting her lies. She chose murder. On Monday morning, Priscilla tried to establish an alibi, claiming she went to work between 8 and 8:15, drove to the post office, saw a long line, and drove around aimlessly. But people in a small town have eyes. A convenience store clerk saw her early that morning, proving she lied about her timeline. Even more damning, a woman looking at a rental house right across the street from Margaret is home saw Priscilla's vehicle parked there between 10 and 10:30 in the morning. That woman heard a gunshot. The autopsy tells a story of pure, unadulterated evil. There was blood in Margaret's bed, meaning Priscilla snuck into the house early and shot her own mother while she slept. But the first small caliber bullet did not penetrate the skull. Priscilla left, Thinking the deed was done, she went to the office, played the concerned daughter, asking her co-workers if anyone had heard from Mom. Then, around lunch, she refused an offer from a co-worker to accompany her and drove back to the house to check on her morbid handiwork. And what does she find? Margaret is not dead. The poor woman has dragged herself out of bed and into the bathroom. There are bloody tissues everywhere, showing Margaret was confused, terrified, and desperately trying to clean her wounds. And what does the loving daughter do? Does she call an ambulance? Does she fall to her knees, weeping, begging her mother for forgiveness? No, she raises that gun and fires a second shot directly into her mother's brainstem to finish the job. I have hunted killers my entire adult life, and that level of cold-blooded calculation, executing the woman who gave you life just to cover up your own pathetic financial failures, it completely defies comprehension. We arrest her during the interrogation. She sits there like a statue. When asked about her mother's murder, she does not even acknowledge the question, displaying a chilling lack of emotion. But when asked about the finances, oh, she suddenly has plenty to say, arrogantly claiming she had the authority to write those bad checks. Even while out on bond, she makes desperate, cagey phone calls to the convenience store clerk, trying to pressure the witness into changing her memory of seeing her that morning. It is pathetic. In August of 1992, a jury of her peers saw her right through the staged burglary, the phantom post office lines, and the financial ruin she tried to wash away in her own mother's blood. They found her guilty and gave her a life sentence. It was a circumstantial case, and we never found the murder weapon. But you do not need the gun when the echoes of a killer is lies are that deafening. A family was completely destroyed. The Sunday dinners, the vacations, the legacy of a wonderful, generous woman, all erased by greed. Finding out that your own blood committed such an unspeakable act is a dark place for a family to navigate. Margaret Abernathy deserved the entire world for how she loved her family. Instead, she got a daughter who looked at her and saw nothing but a dollar sign. Justice was served, but I tell you, it can never bring back the soul of family that died on that bathroom floor. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, but sometimes they kill because the weight of their own existence simply becomes too heavy to bear. I will tell you this. Murder is rarely a sudden thunderbolt. It is usually a slow-building storm. The storm in this case finally broke in May of 2005 in St. Petersburg, Florida, a sunny paradise where retirees go to live out their golden years. A cleaning crew was hired to empty a foreclosed mobile home on Yellow Pine Drive, a residence that had been abandoned for months. When they opened the door, they were greeted by a smell that no amount of time can erase from human memory. It is a distinct heavy odor of rotting flesh. Now, whoever left the surprise behind thought they were a genius. The trailer was littered with car air fresheners, boxes of baking soda, and bowls of potpourri hanging from closets and sitting on counters, mocking the very concept of oxygen. You have to be kidding me. You cannot cover up the smell of death with pine scent and cheap perfume. It simply does not work. The crew found a mattress in the back bedroom piled high with blankets. When they tried to lift the sheets of fabric tore with a sound like ripping hook and loop fasteners, revealing a human leg and foot wrapped in plastic. They called 911. The body was badly decomposed, essentially mummified. But the medical examiner found something that cut through the mystery of natural death like a hot knife. A single bullet hole in the center of the forehead. No exigund, a .38 caliber slug trapped inside the skull. This was no accident. This was an execution. There was no forced entry, no ransacking, which tells me the victim was comfortable with their killer. We had to know who was lying on that bed. Tax records showed the trailer belonged to two sisters, Barbara and Deborah Burns. Neighbors said the younger sister Deborah walked with severe limp and only had 3 teeth. The autopsy confirmed the twisted spine and the dental anomaly. We had our victim, 40-year-old Deborah Burns. Now, the million-dollar question, where was Barbara? A check of Deborah's bank records revealed that someone was still making withdrawals of her $651 monthly Social Security disability checks from an automated teller machine in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Video surveillance showed the older sister Barbara cashing those checks. Well, my. Your sister is rotting in a foreclosed trailer surrounded by air fresheners, and you are cashing her. Government checks in another time zone. Detectives traveled to Virginia Beach and found Barbara working at a local convenience store. When they brought her in for questioning, she played the innocent fool. She sat in that interrogation room and claimed she had no siblings, that she did not even know a Deborah Burns. I tell you, criminals always think they are smarter than the police. But when detectives confronted her with the truth, that they found Deborah dead, the dam broke. She cried and said she just could not take it anymore. The story that spilled out was a masterclass in human tragedy. Barbara had been Deborah's sole caretaker since she was 15 years old. Deborah had suffered brain damage from scarlet fever as a toddler and never matured past the age of 6. For nearly 40 years, Barbara had no life, no friends, no future. She just worked minimum wage jobs and took care of a sister who was demanding, physically abusive, and relentlessly ungrateful. Then a miracle happened, or so they thought. A brother passed away and left them $350,000. They bought the trailer, traveled, and blew the entire fortune in 3 years on junk, including endless toys for Deborah and gifts for online romance scammers. When the money vanished, the reality set in. On Deborah's 40th birthday, they got into a massive fight over finances. Deborah went to sleep and Barbara lay awake listening to her snore, knowing the nightmare would start all over again the next morning. So Barbara walked to the dresser, took out a .38 caliber revolver she bought for protection, walked up to her sleeping sister, and put a bullet in her brain. She unloaded the remaining rounds, hid the gun in a drawer, wrapped the body in plastic, and scattered air fresheners everywhere. She lived in that trailer with her sister's decaying corpse for 6 weeks before boarding a bus to Virginia. You can have all the sympathy in the world for a woman who gave up her entire youth to care for a disabled sibling. And I do feel for her immense burden, but you cannot play God. You do not get to execute a sleeping human being because you are tired. Barbara Burns took a plea deal for manslaughter, was handed a 15-year sentence, and served 12. Today she walks free, claiming she cannot remember pulling the trigger, wishing her sister was still alive. Memory is a convenient thing to lose when the truth is too ugly to look at in the mirror. Humans are fascinating and deeply flawed creatures. They will extinguish a life for the most absurd and trivial reasons you can possibly imagine. I tell you, in my years as a homicide detective, I have seen greed take many forms. But the cold-blooded murder of Fred Brown is a tragedy that defies all human logic. It was the morning of April 25, 1991, in the quiet town of High Point North, Carolina, when Major Tom Shepard received a call about a body found on the side of Highway 60. The victim was a 45-year-old man named Fred Brown, lying face down in a grassy ditch behind a station wagon with 2 gunshot wounds to his head and 1 to his back. There was a clear footprint on his back, a chilling detail indicating the shooter stood directly over him to finish the job. This was no random roadside robbery. This was a calculated, deeply personal execution. Fred was a genuinely good man, a United States Army veteran who bravely served his country during the Vietnam War before settling down to become an economics professor at a local community college. He was universally loved by his students and colleagues, known as a smart, steady, and reliable pillar of the community who would do anything to help a stranger. But his boundless goodness was completely lost on his wife of 20 years, Patricia Brown. Patricia had grown up poor in Oklahoma and clearly saw Fred as her permanent ticket out of a life of struggle. After enduring open-heart surgery in 1990, Patricia went down to Alabama to recover and developed a bizarre obsession returning home to hoard exotic birds until she had 50 or 60 of them filling their house. Fred absolutely hated the birds and the crippling financial debt Patricia was creating with endless home renovations and hot tubs. But he stayed quiet to keep the peace. He was a dutiful husband, but Patricia looked at him and saw nothing more than an obstacle and a life insurance policy. When investigators arrived to break the news, they immediately noticed that Patricia displayed an absolute lack of emotional response, waving away any concerns and claiming their marriage was completely perfect. But a seasoned detective knows that still waters often hide the darkest secrets. Investigators soon learned from Fred's close friend and co-worker that Fred was living in sheer terror, openly admitting he fully expected Patricia to put a contract out on his life. "You have to be kidding me. A man looks his friend in the eye, says his family would be better off with him dead, yet refuses to seek a divorce because his religious convictions will not allow it. My, loyalty is an incredibly noble trait, but it should never cost you your life." Despite the glaring red flags, detectives could not physically tie Patricia to the crime scene because she had a solid alibi, teaching a real estate class 30 minutes away on the night of the murder, with no forensic leads. The case went cold for 3 agonizing years while Patricia collected a massive $250,000 life insurance payout, sold family land, and moved to Alabama to open a lucrative exotic pet business, comfortably living her dream built entirely on her husband's spilled blood. But criminals are inherently stupid, and their own monumental arrogance always catches up with them eventually. In July of 1994, authorities in Reading, Pennsylvania contacted High Point investigators with bombshell. A woman had found cryptic letters written by her father, Leroy Wetzel, bearing the dramatic instruction to open only upon his death. Overcome with curiosity, she opened the envelope to find a highly detailed, written confession to the brutal murder of Fred Brown. Leroy was the ex-husband of Patricia's younger sister, Sheila. He was a thoroughly bad man with a long criminal record, standing only 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 145 pounds, covered in tattoos and anger. When investigators sat down with him, he folded immediately and sang like a canary, revealing the knife surrounded by blood. At first glance, the house looked like the work of a panicked intruder, but the scene was wrong. The broken glass at the back door, it was broken from the inside, a pathetic attempt to stage a crime scene that would make a rookie cadet laugh. The drawers were pulled out and neatly set on the floor, not ransacked in the frantic way of a true thief. It was a performance, a play acted out by someone who thought they were smarter than the people who do this for a living. Priscilla was the baby of the family, the one trusted with the car dealership, the one who lived in her mother's shadow and relied on her mother's wallet. But beneath that soft-spoken, friendly exterior, there was a rot. We discovered she had been running a kite scheme, moving money around between accounts to hide the fact that the dealership was drowning in debt. She was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and the day of reckoning had arrived. Her mother, Margaret, had finally seen through the deception. She had gone to the bank on the Saturday before her death and made it clear that Priscilla's access was going to be cut off. Do you understand what that means? For Priscilla, losing that access was not just an inconvenience. It was the end of her world. It was the end of the money, the status, and the lie. She could not let that happen. She became desperate, and desperation is a dangerous thing. She went to that house on the morning of the 4th, and she did the unthinkable. She shot her own mother in the bedroom, likely while she was still in bed. Then, she must have panicked when she realized Margaret was still alive and had dragged herself into the bathroom trying to clean her wounds. So, she finished the job. 2 shots to the head. A daughter snuffing out the life that gave her everything, all to keep a bank account from going into the red. People often ask me, how does a person do that? How do you look at the woman who raised you, the woman who would do anything for you, and pull a trigger? I think, for that singular, monstrous instant, Priscilla lost her mind. Or perhaps she simply allowed the greed to take the driver's seat. She tried to manipulate witnesses, calling them later to suggest they had the date wrong, trying to rewrite reality. She was cold, calculating, and absolutely terrified of losing her lifestyle. We didn't have the gun. We didn't have a smoking gun in the literal sense, but we had the motive, the lies, and the timeline that tightened around her throat like a noose. A jury in August of 1992 saw it for what it was. She was found guilty, sentenced to life in prison, but look at the cost. The family was destroyed. The Sunday dinners, the vacations, the trust, all of it vanished because of a woman who valued a car dealership more than her own. Mother's pulse. It is a tragedy of the highest order, and it reminds us that in the heart of even the most dignified families, darkness can hide in the plainest of sights. It truly is a sorry business. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Greed, jealousy, a desperate need to keep up appearances when the bank account is screaming that the party is over. It makes you sick. You sit there looking at these people, and you realize the ties that bind are often just thin, fraying ropes, easily snapped by the weight of a dollar sign. My. I tell you, you have to be kidding me. But the truth is usually uglier than any fiction I could conjure. February 4th, 1991. A date that would haunt the picturesque town of LaGrange, Georgia, forever. Margaret Abernathy, 66 years old, a matriarch, a businesswoman, a woman who held her world together with a firm hand and a generous heart. But she lay on her bathroom floor, drowning in her own blood, while the world outside continued to spin in ignorance. When we arrived, everyone thought it was a home invasion, a burglary gone wrong. That is what they always say, is it not? It is a classic script, but the stage was set too neatly. The broken glass at the back door, it was on the outside, not the inside. Someone had tapped that glass to fool the police, to manufacture a narrative that did not exist. You cannot fool a crime scene. A crime scene is a silent witness. And this one was shouting that the killer did not have to force their way in because they already had a key. Priscilla Matula, her own daughter, a woman who was the baby of the family, the one who relied on her mother for everything, from business guidance to financial survival. We looked into the books, and it was a mess, a kite scheme, robbing Peter to pay Paul, over and over until the walls started closing in. Margaret had figured it out. On that Saturday before the murder, she had gone to the bank, furious, and demanded to have Priscilla removed from the accounts. She was cutting the lifeline. Can you imagine the cold calculation that must have taken root in Priscilla's mind? She was in the red, no safety net. If that change went through on Monday, she was finished. She was going to lose the dealership, the house, the standing, everything. So she decided to stop the clock. The internal struggle of a killer like this is a dark, hollow place. I have seen it 1,000 times. You start with desperation, and you end with a decision that murders a part of your own so long before you ever pull a trigger. She drove to her mother's house that morning, the 4th of February. She walked in. She found her mother in bed. She fired that first shot, and I am certain she thought it was over. But Margaret was a fighter even then. She struggled to the bathroom. She tried to clean her wounds with tissue. That is the tragedy of it all. That moment of realization when a victim knows their own child has turned against them. Priscilla did not stop. She finished the job. She took that second shot, the one that hit the brain stem, the one that ended a life of kindness and service. Afterwards, she played the part, the grieving daughter, the concerned child. She went to work. She babbled about school buses and traffic. She lied about her whereabouts, and she waited for the inevitable phone call. When the police finally started tightening the noose, she did not confess. She did not express remorse. She tried to manipulate witnesses, tried to get them to change their stories about seeing her car at her mother's house. It was pathetic. You kill your mother for money, And then you have the gall to try to talk your way out of it. She thought she was smart enough to outrun the truth. But the truth has a funny way of catching up to you in the dark. In the end, she was found guilty. A life sentence. A bittersweet conclusion for a family that was effectively hollowed out from the inside. When Nanny was killed, that entire family died. The dinners, the trust, the shared history, all incinerated by the greed of one woman. It is incomprehensible to me. I have spent my life looking into the eyes of killers, and yet the betrayal of a mother by her daughter still leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. You look for reasons for some shred of humanity, but sometimes you just find a void. My. People think they can control their destiny with a weapon, but all they ever really do is destroy themselves, piece by miserable piece. It is a lesson in the absolute fragility of human loyalty, and a reminder that some people will burn down their entire world just to avoid looking at the bank. Balance. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Greed, a simple, ugly, human emotion that makes people do things that defy logic, that defy nature. You have to be kidding me. I have spent a lifetime looking into the eyes of killers, and I can tell you, the most dangerous people are not the ones hiding in the shadows with a mask. They are the ones sitting across the dinner table from you, the ones who kiss your cheek and hold your hand. My. Let's talk about LaGrange, Georgia, on the 4th of February. 1991. It was a picturesque, quiet town. The kind of place where everyone knows your business before you even know it yourself. Margaret Abernathy was the matriarch of that world, a woman who carried the weight of her family and her businesses with grace. She was a woman who built an empire, a woman who looked after her children, and a woman who was about to be betrayed in the most intimate way possible. You see, Margaret was shot twice. Not once, but twice. The first shot was in the bedroom, where she was resting. She did not die immediately. She crawled to the bathroom, perhaps clutching at the hope that she could fix herself, that she could wash away the nightmare. There was blood on the toilet tissue. And that tells me everything I need to know about the cruelty of the person who pulled that trigger. There was a delay, a window of time where a human being might have shown mercy, might have called for help, might have stopped the clock. Instead, the killer came back. That second shot hit the brainstem. That was the end. The scene was staged. You see, when we walked into that house, the back door was broken. They wanted us to believe a burglar had come through, a stranger in the night. But I have seen enough crime scenes to know when something is painted on. The glass was broken from the inside, a pathetic little hole that a child could barely reach through. It was a lie, a poorly constructed, arrogant lie. And as we dug into the Abernathy family, the picture became clearer. It was not about a stranger. It was about the daughter, Priscilla Matula. You look at the financials and you see the rot. Priscilla was in the red. She was playing a game of musical chairs with money, kiting checks, robbing Peter to pay Paul, trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. Her mother, Margaret, had discovered the discrepancy. Margaret was not the kind of woman to let her family name be tarnished by incompetence or theft, and she was moving to strip Priscilla of her financial power. On that Saturday, at the bank, Margaret was a woman on a mission to protect what she had built. Priscilla knew that by Monday, her lifeline would be severed. She would be exposed. She would be finished. Priscilla created a narrative. She gave us excessive details about traffic, about school buses, about long lines at the post office. People who are telling the truth do not need to build such an elaborate house of cards. They just tell you what happened. But Priscilla needed us to believe she was miles away. She was not. A witness saw her car at the home. She lied about where she was. She lied about her activities. And she even tried to manipulate a witness, Paige Hester, to change her story. That is the act of a cornered animal, not a grieving daughter. I tell you, the desperation here is what haunts me. To kill the woman who gave you life, the woman who gave you the very business you were running into the ground, all for the sake of an insurance policy and access to accounts. It is unimaginable. The trial in August of 1992 was a difficult, painful affair for everyone involved. The jury had to reconcile the image of a businesswoman with the image of a murderer. In the end, they saw through the facade. She was found guilty and sentenced to life. When you sit there and you analyze the life of the victim and the life of the perpetrator, you see two completely different worlds. Margaret was a builder, a nurturer, a woman who believed in the ties that bind. Priscilla was a woman who let greed turn those ties into a noose. Whenever Margaret was killed, that family died with her. The dinners, the trust, the shared history, all vanished in 2 flashes of small-caliber gun. It is a tragedy of the highest order. And it reminds me that no matter how well you think you know someone, the heart of man is desperately wicked. You have to be kidding me. That is all I have to say. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most unthinkable acts for the most trivial reasons imaginable. And when you peel back the layers of a life that looks perfect from the outside, you often find nothing but rot underneath. You have to be kidding me. You look at a woman like Margaret Abernathy, a pillar of her community in LaGrange, Georgia, a matriarch who built a world for her children, and you see dignity. Then you look at the person who ended that life, and you see nothing but a hollow shell driven by a pathetic, desperate greed. I tell you, it is a bitter pill to swallow when the hand that feeds you is the same hand that tries to pull you into the darkness. On the 4th of February, 1991, a quiet town was shaken to its core. Margaret Abernathy was 66 years old, a woman of means, a woman of substance. Her daughter, Priscilla Matula, called 911 that afternoon, claiming she had found her mother hurt after a burglary gone wrong. I have walked through many crime scenes, but this one left a foul taste in my mouth. You see a house that looks like it has been picked over, drawers pulled out, items missing, a mink coat, jewelry, a small firearm. It is a classic setup, a stage play directed by a rank amateur. They broke a window, but they were not smart enough to realize that the glass fell the wrong way, landing on the outside. That tells me everything I need to know. You do not break into a house from the outside and have the glass end up on the lawn. Someone was trying to convince us of a lie, and they were doing a miserable job of it. Margaret had been shot twice in the head. The first shot was meant to be the end of it, but she was a fighter. She crawled to the bathroom, clutching at life, trying to stop the bleeding, leaving behind a trail of blood on the tissues. That is when the second shot, the one that hit her brainstem, took everything from her. Think about the cold, calculating nature of that. The shooter did not just kill, they made sure the job was finished. When you look at the victim, you feel a deep, abiding sadness for a life stolen by someone she brought into this world. But when you look at the daughter, Priscilla, you see a woman who had been living on borrowed time and borrowed money. She was neck-deep in a check kiting scheme, robbing Peter to pay Paul, juggling thousands of dollars that did not belong to her. When her mother discovered the truth and decided to cut her off, Priscilla did not see a mother. She saw an obstacle, a financial lifeline that was about to be severed. She lied about her movements that day. She claimed she was at work, but witnesses saw her car at her mother's home. She claimed she was innocent, but she was caught trying to bully a witness into changing their story after she was out on bond. It is a pathetic, desperate scramble for survival, and it cost a woman her life. During the trial in August of 1992, the jury heard the truth behind the smoke and mirrors. They saw the desperation of a daughter who chose money over the blood that flows through her own veins. She was found guilty and sentenced to life, a sentence that hardly balances the scale for the loss of a mother and the destruction of an entire family. When I think about this case, I think about the fragility of human connections. We spend our lives building empires, raising children, nurturing businesses, only for it to be erased in a single moment by the greed of someone who should have been our greatest defender. It is a haunting reality, and I tell you, it is one that sticks in your craw long after the courtroom doors have closed. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. You spend your life building something. You pour your heart into your children. You provide. You nurture. And then, in the blink of an eye, it is all extinguished by the very person you trusted the most. My, it makes you wonder what kind of monster hides behind a smile. Does it not? I tell you, it is a cold, dark place to look. On the 4th of February, 1991, in LaGrange, Georgia, a tragedy unfolded that would leave a community shaken to its core. Margaret Abernathy, a woman who held the fabric of her family and her town together, was found on her bathroom floor. She was a businesswoman, a grandmother, a matriarch who had given everything to her children, and yet she was discovered with 2 gunshot wounds to her head. You have to be kidding me. A woman of her stature, a pillar of the community, gunned down in her own sanctuary. When we arrived, the scene was a mess of contradictions. The daughter, Priscilla Matula, had called it in, reporting a burglary. The house was supposed to be a crime scene of a random home invasion. But when you have spent as many years as I have looking at dead bodies, you learn that the scene talks to you, even if the perpetrator tries to make it lie. The glass from a broken window was on the outside, not the inside. A child could have seen that the break-in was staged. It was a pathetic attempt to distract us. Priscilla, the daughter, was the one who found her. She gave a narrative, a timeline so detailed it was practically rehearsed. She told us where she drove, what school buses she followed, what errands she ran. It was excessive. Guilty people often talk too much, try and fill the silence with lies. She wanted us to believe she was busy at work, distracted by the day. But we found out she was at the convenience store, right near her mother's house when the shots were fired. The medical reality of the crime was chilling. Margaret was shot once while in her bed, then crawled to the bathroom to try and stop the bleeding. The killer returned, found her still fighting for breath, and fired a second time, hitting her brain stem. It was not a crime of passion. It was a calculated execution. It was about money. Margaret had realized that her daughter was kiting checks, robbing Peter to pay Paul, bleeding the family business dry. Margaret was going to cut her off. On that Saturday at the bank, Margaret had been adamant about removing Priscilla's authority. Priscilla knew that come Monday, if she did not do something, she would lose everything. You have to imagine that moment of realization for the daughter, the absolute desperation of someone who has built a house of cards and sees the wind coming. She chose her greed over the blood that gave her life. She was a woman who had been coddled, supported, and loved, yet she decided to end it all to preserve her status. When we finally arrested her, she remained cold, almost attached. She would not even acknowledge that we were talking about her own mother's murder. She tried to coach witnesses, calling them and asking them to change their stories, trying to manipulate the timeline. It was a circumstantial case, yes, but the motive was as clear as day. A jury saw through the smoke and mirrors. In August of 1992, she was found guilty. People ask me, how does a daughter do that? How do you look at the person who raised you, who sacrificed for you, and pull the trigger? I tell you, it is the darkest side of the human condition. It is the moment when the ties that bind are snapped by the weight of a corrupted soul. It is a tragedy that leaves no winners, only a family decimated and a memory stained forever. It is hard to find the humanity in it, but you have to look. And when you do, you find nothing but a hollow, greedy heart. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. They kill for money. They kill for lust. They kill because they simply cannot face the consequences of their own failures. My. You look at a woman like Margaret Abernathy, a matriarch, a pillar of her community in LaGrange, Georgia, and you think, surely this life is secure. But greed is a poison, and it works fastest on those who think they are untouchable. On the 4th of February, 1991, everything changed. We received a call from Priscilla Matula. She found her mother, 66-year-old Margaret Abernathy, lying on the bathroom floor in a pool of blood. You have to be kidding me. I thought when I first heard it, a burglary gone wrong? That is the oldest trick in the book, and frankly, it is the one that insults my intelligence the most. You see, Margaret was shot twice in the head. The first shot was in the bed. The bed was turned down. She was asleep or lounging, and then a bullet. She survived that one. She tried to clean herself up in the bathroom with toilet tissue. That tells me a story. It tells me there was time. It tells me the killer came back to finish the job because the first attempt was not quite enough. And the second shot, the one that hit the brain stem, that was calculated. That was cold. Priscilla was the daughter, the one who worked right alongside her mother. They were inseparable. But when we looked at the financial records, the mask started to slip. I tell you, you follow the money, and you will eventually find the devil. Priscilla and her husband, Nick, were in the red. They were drowning. They were playing a kite scheme, robbing Peter to pay Paul, shifting checks between banks, pretending they had money they did not have. Margaret had finally seen it. She had gone to the bank the Saturday before she died, determined to cut Priscilla off, to take her off the accounts. Priscilla knew that by Monday morning, her financial life support was going to be severed. She would lose everything. And so, she decided she would rather have her mother dead than lose her status. She staged the scene. She broke a window pane from the inside, leaving the glass on the outside, a mistake so amateur it makes my skin crawl, and she made it look like a burglary. She even hid the jewelry and the mink coat to sell the lie. But lies have a way of unraveling. We found witnesses who saw her Jeep at the house during the time she claimed she was at work. We found a clerk who saw her at a convenience store nearby. And then there was a phone call she made to that clerk after the murder, trying to coerce her into changing her story, trying to rewrite reality. It was pathetic. She was not a mastermind. She was a desperate woman running out of time. I have seen many things in my career, but a daughter murdering her mother is something that stays with you. It is a darkness that is difficult to process. You look at the family, the dinners, the vacations, the history. All of it vanished because of a spreadsheet and a selfish heart. Margaret Abernathy was a woman who gave everything to her children, and in return, her own daughter took her life. That is the tragedy of it. It is not just the act itself. It is the absolute betrayal of the blood. People ask me if I get angry. I do not get angry. I get focused, and in the end, justice was served. A jury heard the truth, and Priscilla Matula was sentenced to life. The case closed, but the shadow of it, that stays. It stays because you realize that the person sitting across the dinner table from you might just be the one who wants you gone, all for the sake of a few more dollars. It is a cold world, and I tell you, it does not get any warmer. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. They trade their souls for a few dollars or a sense of control, or simply because their own house of cards is about to collapse and they would rather burn the world down than admit they failed. My. You look at a case like this, and you have to wonder if they ever stop to look in the mirror. I tell you, it is a sickness of the heart. February 4th, 1991. A day that started like any other in the picturesque town of LaGrange, Georgia, but ended with a tragedy that would tear a dignified family to the brink of collapse. Margaret Abernathy was a woman who held her community together, a matriarch who operated a successful dealership and lived a life built on generosity and hard work. But her daughter, Priscilla Matula, was walking a different path, one paved with deception and the rot of greed. You have to understand the dynamic here. Margaret was the sun that everyone orbited. She was the one who provided the collateral, the one who fronted the money for Priscilla and her husband, Nick, to buy their own car dealership. But when you are living on someone else's dime, you're only as safe as their patience. And Margaret, the woman who loved her children beyond measure, finally saw the truth. She discovered the accounting irregularities, the check kiting, the desperate attempts to make a failing business look like a gold mine. She had gone to the bank that previous Saturday, absolutely distraught, demanding that Priscilla be removed from all accounts. The lifeline was being cut. Priscilla knew she was finished. If her mother followed through on Monday, she and Nick would be destitute. They were in the red, and they had no safety net left. So she did the unthinkable. She went to her mother's home that Monday morning, under the guise of whatever lie she needed to tell, and she ended a life that had given her everything. It is a cold, calculated reality. You see the crime scene, a bed with covers turned down, blood on the pillow. Margaret was likely asleep when the first shot rang out. Most people, if they were forced into such a horrific act, might stop there, stunned by the gravity of what they had done. But not Priscilla. She had to finish it. She found her mother in the bathroom, still clinging to life, trying to clean her own wounds. And she fired again. That second shot to the brain stem was the end. You have to be kidding me. To stand over your own mother, the woman who helped you raise your children, and ensure she did not survive? It is a level of darkness that most people cannot even comprehend. Then the performance began. She staged a burglary. She broke a small pane of glass in the back door, but she made a fatal error. The glass was on outside. You don't break in and leave the evidence pointing toward the lawn. And she left the valuables that a real thief would have taken, the televisions, the electronics, all sitting there in plain sight. It was a shallow, pathetic attempt to redirect our gaze. I spent my life staring into the eyes of people who think they are smarter than the law. I watched Priscilla try to weave her narrative, detailing her morning, her trips to the bank, the traffic, the school buses. It was too much detail, a story rehearsed until it lost all its life. When you are innocent, you tell the truth because the truth is the only thing you have. When you are guilty, you build a fortress of lies, and eventually, the weight of those lies crushes you. The motive was clear as glass. Money. Pure, unadulterated greed. She chose to keep the business and the status over the woman who gave her life. When we finally brought her in, she wouldn't even acknowledge the murder. She talked about accounts and authority, as if that could wash the blood off her hands. She even tried to manipulate a witness after she was out on bond, hoping to adjust history to fit her story. It did not work. A jury of her peers listened. They looked at the facts, and they reached the only conclusion possible: a life sentence. She lost her freedom, but she had already lost her soul years before, somewhere in the ledgers of a failing car dealership. You look at families like the Abernethys, once proud and happy, now shattered by a single act of betrayal, and you realize that money is a poor substitute for love. People, I tell you, they will do anything to keep the lights on, even when it means leaving everyone else in the dark. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Greed, pride, the sheer inability to admit they have failed. I tell you, it never ceases to amaze me what a person will do when they realize the walls are closing in and their comfortable little life is about to be exposed as a house of cards. You have to be kidding me. You think to yourself, but then you look at the evidence, and the cold reality sets in. My. It is a tragedy that brings even the most dignified families to the absolute brink of collapse. On the 4th of February, 1991, in the picturesque small town of LaGrange, Georgia, a life of prominence and generosity was brought to a violent, senseless end. Margaret Abernathy was 66 years old, a matriarch who ran her world with grace and a sharp business mind. But she was found in her own bathroom, fighting for her final breath with 2 bullets in her head. When we first arrived, everyone thought we were looking at a home invasion gone wrong, a burglary that had turned into a nightmare. The house was an active crime scene, cold and hollow. We saw the bed with the covers turned down and blood on the pillow. It was clear she was asleep when she was first attacked, then managed to crawl to the bathroom, clutching toilet tissue in a pathetic, desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. The scene was staged, plain and simple. The broken glass at the back door was an amateurish attempt to deceive us. With the shards lying on the outside, a physical impossibility for a true break-in. Someone wanted us to see a burglary, but all we saw was a lie. We looked at everyone. Her son-in-law, Nick, tried to cast blame on others, and the young man living there, Diaka, became a person of interest when he vanished from his job. But Diaka was just a young man scared of losing his employment, and his alibi held up under the lightest pressure. Then, the truth began to bleed through the cracks of the family foundation. Margaret had gone to the bank of Troup County just days before her murder, agitated and distraught, demanding that her daughter, Priscilla Matula, be removed from all business accounts. She had discovered the truth. She had discovered that her own flesh and blood was running a check-kiting scheme, a desperate game of robbing Peter to pay Paul that had left the family business in ruins. Priscilla was in the red. She was staring down the barrel of financial ruin, and her mother was the only thing standing between her and total exposure. I tell you, when you realize your own daughter has turned into a monster because of money, it is a darkness that is hard to fathom. We found witnesses. A convenience store clerk saw Priscilla near her mother's home, and a neighbor saw her car parked right there during the window of the attack. Her alibi was a work of fiction, meticulously crafted with excessive, unnecessary details that only a guilty person provides. And when she thought she was safe, she tried to lean on a witness, try to plant a seed of doubt about the timeline, not realizing we were listening to every single word. She was convicted in August of 1992, sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. You look at a case like this, and you realize that the ties that bond are not always as strong as the rot within a person. It is a haunting thought, isn't it, that a daughter could look at the woman who gave her everything and decide that her own survival was worth more than her mother's life. It leaves a family shattered, a legacy turned to ash, and a detective left with nothing but the silence of a cold, empty house and the lingering, bitter taste of human betrayal. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial reasons you could ever imagine. My, you have to be kidding me. You think you know your own flesh and blood. You think you know the person who sat across from you at dinner every Sunday. But then, in a blink of an eye, the mask slips and you're staring into the cold, hollow void of a killer. I tell you, it is a bitter pill to swallow when the hand that reaches for the inheritance is the same one that holds a weapon. Let us look at the facts of February 4th, 1991, in LaGrange, Georgia, a picturesque place. The kind of town where people leave their doors unlocked and trust is the currency of the realm. Margaret Abernathy was the matriarch, a woman who built an empire out of car dealerships and community service. She was the steady hand, the bank account, and the heart of her family. Her daughter, Priscilla Matula, was supposed to be the heir apparent, the one who would carry the torch. But greed is a funny thing. It acts like a slow-moving poison, rotting away the conscience until there is nothing left but the frantic, desperate urge to protect one's own skin. Priscilla was in deep. She and her husband, Nick, were drowning in debt, playing a dangerous game of financial smoke and mirrors, what we call a check-kiting scheme. They were robbing Peter to pay Paul, juggling numbers to make a sinking ship look like a luxury yacht. When Margaret discovered the fraud, she did what any savvy businesswoman would do. She moved to cut the lifeline. She went to the bank on that fateful Saturday to strip Priscilla of her authority. She was agitated, she was furious, and she was finished with the lies. That Saturday, in the mind of a desperate woman like Priscilla, was the beginning of the end. If she did not stop her mother, she would lose everything. The status, the business, the illusion of success, it would all evaporate come Monday morning. So, on the morning of February 4th, Priscilla did not go to work as she claimed. She went to her mother's house. She walked through those doors with a cold, calculated intent that makes my skin crawl. She fired the first shot while Margaret lay in her bed, thinking her daughter was 1,000 miles away. I tell you, it is sickening to think about. She thought the job was done, but Margaret, bless her resilient heart, survived the first round. She managed to crawl into the bathroom, trying to stem the bleeding, trying to survive. When Priscilla returned and found her mother still clinging to life, she did not call for help. She did not show mercy. She finished the job. That is not a daughter. That is a predator. The stage was set. She broke the glass of the back door from the inside to create the fiction of a burglary, a clumsy attempt to paint a picture that no detective with 2 eyes in his head would buy. She scattered drawers, she hid the valuables, and she played the part of the grieving daughter perfectly. She even had the audacity to try and manipulate a witness, Paige Hester, telling her, "Are you sure it was a 4th? Maybe it was another day." My. The arrogance of the guilty is a predictable, pathetic thing. She thought she was smarter than the law. She thought a story would be enough to bury the truth, along with her mother. When we finally caught her, she wouldn't even acknowledge the murder. She just stared right through us. The courtroom saw through the facade, and in August of 1992, justice was served, a life sentence. It is a tragedy of the highest order, not just because a prominent woman was taken, but because of the depth of the betrayal. You look at these cases and you have to ask yourself, what is the price of a soul? For Priscilla, it was whatever amount of money she thought she could salvage from a dying empire. She traded her mother's life for a temporary delay in her own financial ruin. It is hard to fathom, but in my line of work, you learn that people are capable of anything. We spend our lives looking for the truth, and sometimes the truth is the most heartbreaking thing of all. You have to be kidding me. But that is the job. That is the burden. And that is why we never stop, because the truth, no matter how ugly, is the only thing that remains when the lights go out. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine. Money, pride, a perceived slight. They will throw away their humanity as if it were nothing more than yesterday's. Trash. I have seen the darkest corners of the human heart, and I tell you, it never gets any easier to stomach. My, you are looking at a case that tore the very fabric of a family apart. February 4th, 1991, LaGrange, Georgia. A quiet place, a place where people believe they are safe behind locked doors. Margaret Abernathy, a woman who built an empire from the ground up, a pillar of her community, was found in her own bathroom. The scene was painted in blood. At first glance, it looked like a home invasion, a burglary gone horribly wrong. But in my line of work, the first thing I learned is that what you see is rarely what you get. You have to be kidding me. A broken window with the glass on the outside? A home where no televisions, no electronics, no cameras were missing? That is not a burglary. That is a stage play, and a poorly directed one at that. When we look at a scene, we look for the truth hidden in the silence. Margaret had been shot twice. The first shot was in the bedroom while she slept, a coward's opening move. She had enough strength to crawl to the bathroom, clutching toilet tissue in a desperate, final attempt to stop her own life from leaking away. Then came the second shot, the one that hit the brain stem and ended everything. It was personal. It was intimate. We started pulling at the threads, and the whole tapestry unraveled. Priscilla Matula, the daughter, the one who found her mother. She was so full of detail, so eager to narrate her whereabouts on that morning. The school buses, the traffic, the post office lines. Excessive detail is usually a sign of a story being polished until it shines. But polished stories crack under pressure. She claimed she was nowhere near the house, but we had witnesses. A convenience store clerk saw her. A neighbor saw her Jeep. And the Bank of Troup County? They told us the truth. Margaret was furious. She had discovered the financial games, the kite schemes, robbing Peter to pay Paul, that Priscilla was running to keep her sinking dealership afloat. She was going to cut Priscilla off. You see, for a person like Priscilla, that wasn't just a loss of money. It was the end of her identity. She had built a life on her mother's generosity, and when the safety net was pulled away, she didn't choose to find another way. She chose to eliminate the obstacle. The desperation must have been a cold, heavy thing in her chest. She had to have sat there, stewing in her own greed, convincing herself that this was the only way to keep the walls from closing in. And then the phone call. After she was arrested, she reaches out to a witness, trying to twist the truth, trying to reshape reality because she couldn't face the one she had created. It was pathetic, really. We didn't have the weapon, and we didn't have a witness to the trigger pull, but we had the motive and we had the lies. A jury saw through it. 1,992. She was found guilty. You know, there's a particular kind of coldness required to look at the woman who gave you life, the woman who stood by you through every storm, and decide that her life is worth less than the bank accounts you were pillaging. It makes you wonder about the nature of love, and how easily it curdles into something unrecognizable. The family died that day, too. They lost their grandmother, they lost their history, and they lost their faith in each other. It is a tragedy that serves as a grim reminder. Money comes and goes, but once you lose your soul, you never get it back. That is the reality of the business, every single time. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial reasons imaginable, and sometimes the ones you tuck in at night are the ones waiting to tear your world apart. My. I tell you, you have to be kidding me. But the truth is usually far more bitter than fiction. We are looking at February 4th, 1991, in the sleepy, picturesque town of LaGrange, Georgia. It is a place where everybody knows everybody. And if you are a prominent businesswoman like Margaret Abernathy, you think you are safe in your own home. You would be wrong. Margaret was a matriarch in every sense of the word. She held the purse strings, the business interests, and the heart of her family. But beneath that dignified exterior, the family was rotting from the inside out. When the call came in at 12:30 in the afternoon, it sounded like a classic home invasion. A daughter, Priscilla Matula, finds her mother on the bathroom floor, surrounded by blood. It pulls at your heartstrings, doesn't it? But as an investigator, I have learned that when someone is crying the loudest, they are often the ones holding the shovel. The scene was a puzzle. The front door was locked, and a rear window had been broken. But take a closer look. Most of the glass was on the outside. You have to be kidding me. You do not break into a house from the outside and leave the glass on the lawn. It was staged. A crude attempt by someone who thought they were smarter than the detectives walking through the door. And then there is the matter of the victim herself. Margaret had been shot twice. One shot in the bedroom, one in the bathroom. Forensic evidence tells a story you cannot lie your way out of. She was in her bed when the first shot hit, and she crawled, injured and terrified, into the bathroom to try to stop the bleeding. The killer had time. The killer walked into that bathroom and finished the job. That is not an act of passion. That is an act of cold, calculated execution. We looked at everyone. Diaka, the gentle giant who lived with her, and Alec, the son with the mountain of debt. But those paths led to dead ends. Then the truth started to trickle in like a slow leak in a boat. Margaret had been to the bank just days before her death. She was done with the games. She was going to cut Priscilla off from the family accounts. She was going to strip away the illusion of success that Priscilla had built on a foundation of lies. You see, Priscilla was a thief. She was running a kite scheme, moving money around like a shell game, robbing Peter to pay Paul. All while her mother was footing the bill for a business that existed more on paper than in reality. When Margaret realized her own daughter was bleeding her dry, she did what any mother would do. She decided to stop the bleeding. But Priscilla, she was not going to let her comfortable life evaporate. the darkness that takes hold of a person when they realize their survival depends on someone else's. Demise is a terrifying thing to witness. Priscilla lied about her whereabouts. Her alibi was in shambles. And she even had the audacity to try to tamper with a witness, calling that convenience store clerk to change her story. It was all a charade. She stood there, the grieving daughter, all the while knowing she had left her mother to die on a cold bathroom floor to protect her own. Hide. It is the ultimate betrayal. A daughter killing her mother over greed? It makes you wonder what really hides behind the curtains of a quiet, wealthy home. When the jury handed down that guilty verdict in August of 1992, it was not just a conviction for murder. It was a final, devastating chapter of family that had already died the moment that trigger was pulled. The irony of it all is that she killed for money, and in the end, she lost everything. That is the tragedy of it. The greed, the desperation, the sheer cold-blooded decision to end a life that gave you yours. It is a haunting reminder that in this business, you never really know what lurks in the heart of a person until you force them into a corner. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. Greed, jealousy, a desperate need to maintain a facade of success when the walls are closing in. You look at a case like this and you ask yourself, what kind of person turns on the very hands that fed, clothed, and built their life? It makes you sick. I tell you, it truly does. My, you have to be kidding me. It was February 4th, 1991, in the quiet, tight-knit town of LaGrange, Georgia. Margaret Abernathy was a pillar of that community. A businesswoman, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who had spent her life helping others. And then there was her daughter, Priscilla Matula. Priscilla was the baby of the family, the one trusted to take the reins. But behind the scenes, the foundation of this family empire was cracking. When I look at this case, I see a woman, Margaret, who was generous to a fault. She had fronted $130,000 to help Priscilla and her husband, Nick, buy a car dealership. She was their safety net. But business is not a hobby. And Priscilla was running a kite scheme that would make a seasoned con artist blush. She was robbing Peter to pay Paul, shifting money between accounts, manufacturing sales that never happened, all to cover the fact that she was buried in debt. Margaret found out. That Saturday, she went to bank, furious, and demanded that Priscilla be removed from all business accounts. She was going to cut her off, and in that moment, Priscilla realized the game was up. She would lose everything. Her status, her business, her lifestyle. She stared into the abyss of her own failures, and, instead of facing them like an adult, she decided to silence the woman who was about to expose her. Priscilla claimed she was at work all morning on the day of a murder. She gave the investigators an overly detailed narrative. School buses, long lines at the post office, phone calls. It was too much information. You see, when a person is telling the truth, they give you the facts. When they are lying, they build a fortress of details to hide behind. She was lying. A witness placed her car at her mother's house between 10 and 10:30 that morning. And at that exact time, gunshots rang out. Margaret was in her bedroom when she was first attacked. The evidence suggested she was likely asleep or lounging. One shot struck her, but it did not penetrate the skull. She was alive. She dragged herself to the bathroom, clutching toilet paper to stop the bleeding, desperate to survive. And that is when the monster returned to finish the job. A second shot right into the brainstem. That was the end of it. The shooter then staged a burglary, breaking a small pane of glass from the inside, tossing a few drawers to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. They took a mink coat, some jewelry, and a small caliber weapon, a Derringer. Priscilla was a cold piece of work. She was the one who called 911, acting the part of the grieving, shocked daughter. She thought she was clever. But she forgot one thing. The dead might not speak, but the evidence always does. The autopsy told the story of the time gap between the shots, Time for the shooter to deliberate, to choose to end her mother's life. Then came the phone call to the store clerk, Paige Hester, weeks later. Priscilla was trying to coach a witness, trying to rewrite history. She was desperate. You have to ask, what goes through a mind like that? To look at your own mother, the woman who loved you, who helped you, and decide she is worth less than the money you lost on a failed dealership? It is a level of selfishness that defies understanding. She was in the red, and she saw her mother as the only obstacle to her financial survival. She didn't just kill her mother, she killed her family. She left a void that could never be filled. When the jury returned with a verdict of guilty in August of 1990, it wasn't a victory. It was a tragedy. She got life as she deserved. But you look at the faces of that family, and you realize they lost everything. The dinners, the trust, the shared history, it all died on that bathroom floor. It is a grim reminder that ties that bond can break under the weight of greed. And when they do, the aftermath is a cold, lonely place. I have seen a lot of things in my time, but a daughter taking her mother's life for a ledger balance, that is a darkness that never quite leaves you. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for reasons so absurd, so mundane, that you would not believe them even if they were staring you right in the face. My. I have spent decades in the company of the dead and the broken, and I tell you, nothing prepares you for the sheer, cold realization that a family can simply vanish into the thin air of a mountain, leaving behind a life that was supposed to be a fresh start. You have to be kidding me. When I look at the case of the Jameson family, I do not see ghosts or supernatural entities. I see a man named Bobby and a woman named Sherilyn, two souls caught in the downward spiral of addiction and the suffocating pressure of financial ruin. They were looking for a way out, hoping to build a fortress against the world in a rugged, unforgiving corner of Oklahoma. But despair, when left to fester, does not build fortresses. It invites monsters. The facts, cold and hard as the granite on that mountain, paint a picture of a desperate search for redemption that ended in a tragedy of silence. You have this truck, found on a lonely road in Latimer County on the 17th of October, 2009. Inside, the keys were still in the ignition, and yet the doors were locked, trapping a small, starving dog in the middle of a nightmare. There was $32,000 in cash tucked away under the seat. Think about that for a second. If this were a simple robbery, or if someone were looking to settle a score, why would that money be sitting there, waiting to be found? It defies logic. It speaks of a chaotic, hurried departure, or perhaps an intervention that no one saw coming. Then there is that letter. A 7-page manifesto from Sherilyn to her husband, filled with talk of demons, betrayal, and attempted murder. It is the kind of document that makes your blood run cold because it exposes the raw, jagged edges of a marriage that had already collapsed from within. She accused him of being a monster. She spoke of spirits. Was she losing her grip on reality, or were they both drowning in a shared psychosis? I have dealt with people on the edge of the abyss, and when you strip away the medication, the sanity, you are left with something very dangerous. But to suggest she simply marched her family into the woods to die, it does not sit right with me. The evidence does not match the conclusion. When the remains of the family were finally discovered 4 years later, just 2.6 miles from that truck, the mystery only deepened. That terrain is not a place for a casual stroll, especially not for a man with chronic back pain and a young child. They did not hike there. They were taken there. Someone knew they were on that mountain. Someone knew they were carrying that money, and someone made sure they never came back down. I look at the individuals on that mountain, like the man who claimed to have spoken with them, only to later have his own dark history with violence come to light in another state. Is it a coincidence? In my line of work, I have learned that coincidences are often just clues that have not yet been connected. The sheriff, Israel Beecham, walked away believing he knew who pulled the trigger, yet he had no way to prove it. The case is filed as undetermined. It sits in a drawer, gathering dust while the truth rots in the Oklahoma soil. It is a failure of justice. It is a stain on the record. And somewhere out there, a killer is still breathing the same air as the rest of us, perhaps thinking they got away with it. They might have fooled the law, but the truth has a way of scratching at the door, waiting for someone to listen, and I am still listening. You see, the thing about human beings is that we are fragile, messy creatures, and sometimes we go searching for a new life only to find a dark, permanent ending instead. It is a tragedy that keeps me awake, sitting here, wondering how an entire family, a father, a mother, and a 6-year-old girl, simply vanishes into the thin air of an Oklahoma mountain, only to be found years later, scattered like leaves in the wind. You have to be kidding me if you think this was just some simple case of getting lost in the woods. I tell you, there is more to this story than the cold, hard dirt of the mountain floor. The Jameson family, Bobby and Sherilyn, were not looking for trouble. They were looking for a fresh start, a plot of land where they could live off the grid, away from the noise and the judgment of a world they felt had turned against them. They had their secrets, of course. We all have baggage, but theirs was heavy. They were living in a haze of medication, financial desperation, and a growing, suffocating fear of the unseen. Sherilyn, struggling with her mental health, had become convinced that shadows were lurking, that the very air in their home was thick with malevolence. Bobby, desperate and perhaps equally lost, was searching for spiritual armor, talking about demon-killing bullets and reading texts that would make any sane man pause. They were a family under siege, not by men with guns, but by the specters of their own making. Then came that day in October, a date that should have been the beginning of their new life, but instead became the final chapter. They drove up that rugged path on Panola Mountain, that jagged, unforgiving terrain. We have that photograph of little Madison, standing before those rocks, her face a mask of confusion, as if she knew something was wrong. And maybe she did. We have the footage of them at their home, pacing, walking back and forth like people caught in a waking dream, loading things into a truck that seemed to hold nothing at all. Some call it a trance. I call it the behavior of people who have already begun to detach from reality. But then, the facts take a turn that makes my blood run cold. They arrive, they look at the land, they speak to locals,